You never really forget the person who broke you, not the sound of their voice, not the smell of their perfume, not even the way their lies tasted sweet before they turned to poison. For me, that person was Claire. 10 years ago, I came home from a business trip early. I remember the sound first, laughter, muffled but too familiar. Then the sight, her body tangled in someone else's, in our bed. That moment didn't just end our marriage. It ended the man I was. After the divorce, she took half of everything. My savings, my dignity, even the house. I left Seattle and didn't look back. I built something new, something no one could touch. A startup, a name, a life that looked perfect on paper. But inside, I was still that man standing in the doorway, watching everything he loved get destroyed. I told myself I'd moved on, that she wasn't worth remembering, but then, one Monday morning, she walked back into my life. I was in a downtown cafe waiting for a client, the kind of place where everyone pretends they're too busy to care about anyone else. I was half buried in emails when I heard a laugh. It froze me. That same high, confident laugh, the one that always came before she said something cruel and called it just a joke. I looked up. And there she was. Claire. 10 years later, and still effortlessly beautiful. Expensive blazer, gold necklace, hair pulled back like she owned the air on her. She was older, yes, but age had only made her sharper, like a knife that had been honed, not dulled. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy talking to a man, tall, nervous, clearly infatuated. I watched the way she leaned in, the way she smiled, like every word he said was the most interesting thing she'd ever heard. It was the same smile she used on me. And it hit me. She hadn't changed at all. I should have looked away. I should have left. But something in me stayed. Something dark. Something that whispered, "You're not that broken kid anymore. You have power now." When her meeting ended, she turned, and her eyes locked on mine. For a second, I saw confusion, then shock, then something colder, calculation. "And Marcus," she said, using the name everyone in this city knew me by, not my old name, Mark Holden, the one she'd destroyed. "Claire," I said evenly. "It's been a while." We talked. She played polite, as if nothing had happened. Said she'd moved to town recently. New job, divorced again, looking for a fresh start. I smiled at all the right times, asked all the right questions, never let her see what was behind my calm. She didn't recognize the man sitting across from her. She didn't know I'd changed my last name when I rebuilt my company. She didn't realize that the person she'd cheated and left in ruins was now the CEO whose firm she was hoping to partner with. When she mentioned the company she worked for, I almost laughed. Stonebridge Consulting, one of the firms bidding on a contract I controlled. Fate didn't hand me coincidences. It handed me opportunities. That night, I went home and opened an old box. Inside were things I'd promised myself I'd thrown away: photographs, notes, the letter she left after she'd packed her bags. "Don't call me. You'll never understand why I had to do this." I'd memorized that line, but now I did understand. She hadn't left me for love or passion. She'd left because I was safe, and she craved chaos. She fed on it. And now chaos was exactly what I was going to give her. I spent the next week watching her, quietly, carefully. She went to the same bars she used to, flirted with the same kind of men, always chasing attention, validation, that same hunger behind her smile. She didn't know that every text, every email, minus one project proposal from Stonebridge, came across my desk first. When her company's rep emailed to schedule a pitch meeting with our firm, I made sure she was the one assigned to lead it. The same woman who'd once said I'd never amount to anything was now preparing to stand in front of me, beg for a contract, and try to impress me. The night before the meeting, I sat on my balcony with a glass of whiskey. The city lights shimmered below, cold, distant, perfect. 10 years ago, she'd taken everything from me. Now, I was going to take everything from her slowly, piece by piece. And when she finally realized who I was, when she saw what I'd done to her life, I wanted her to feel what I had felt. That sick, hollow drop in the stomach. That moment when everything she thought she controlled vanished. I finished my drink, watching the reflection of the skyline on the glass. Tomorrow, she'd walk into my office thinking she could charm her way through a business deal. Tomorrow, she'd look into the eyes of the man she thought she'd destroyed. Tomorrow, she'd meet the storm she created. And this time, I'd be the one smiling. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. The skyline was barely waking up, streaks of gold sliding over the glass towers, the hum of the city just beginning. I liked it that way, quiet, still, before the world started lying again. My assistant, Jenna, was already there, typing furiously as she nursed a coffee. "Morning, boss," she said. "Stonebridge is confirmed for 10 a.m. The lead rep is Claire." She paused, noticing my slight smirk. "You know her." "Let's just say," I said, buttoning my cuffs, "we've met before." By 9:58, I was in the boardroom, the air smelling faintly of oak and coffee. My reflection in the glass wall looked calm, successful, collected. Nothing like the man I'd been 10 years ago. Then the door opened. Claire walked in, confident as ever, trailed by a junior associate carrying binders. She looked immaculate, a white blazer, red lipstick, that same air of superiority that used to both attract and disgust me. But beneath the surface, I saw the faint tremor in her fingers as she adjusted her papers, the calculated glances she threw my way like she was trying to read me. She didn't remember me yet, not completely, but her instincts were screaming that something was off. "Mr. Marcus Allen," she said smoothly, extending a hand. "Thank you for seeing us. We've heard great things about your firm." Her hand trembled just slightly in mine. "I'm sure you have," I said, my voice calm, practiced. "Please show me what you've got." She began, her pitch clear, confident, charming. She always knew how to control a room. I'd once admired that about her. Now I watched it like a scientist studying a venomous snake. Beautiful, but predictable. Her associate droned on about numbers and projections, but my focus stayed on Claire. The way her eyes flickered toward me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her breathing hitched when I leaned forward, just slightly, into her space. Every time I smiled, she seemed to tense a little more. By the end of the presentation, the room was quiet. "Well," I said finally, "Stonebridge has some interesting numbers." I paused, let the silence drag, the same silence she used to fill with apologies, excuses, half-truths. "But I'm curious about the people behind the proposal. Tell me, Miss Peterson." I said her maiden name deliberately. Her eyes widened, just a flash, but it was enough. "What made you join Stonebridge?" She hesitated, caught off guard. After my divorce, I wanted a fresh start. They offered me a position in business development." Her voice softened, just slightly. "I guess I was looking for something new." "A new beginning?" I echoed. "We all want that, don't we?" Her lips pressed into a thin smile. "Yes, I suppose we do." After the meeting, as her team left, I stopped her at the door. "Claire," I said, and she froze. "Stay for a minute." The associate hesitated, then left. We were alone. She turned to face me. "You remember me, don't you?" I smiled faintly. "It's hard to forget." She exhaled, a mixture of relief and guilt crossing her face. Marcus, I didn't realize." "You didn't realize who I was when you walked in," I interrupted. "Or you didn't realize that someday you'd have to see me again." Her throat tightened. "I know I hurt you." "I hurt?" I said, my tone sharpening. "That's a mild way to describe burning someone's life to the ground." She looked down. "I was young, stupid, I made mistakes. You made choices. I corrected." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us buzzed with years of buried anger, guilt, and something else, a dangerous familiarity. Finally, I leaned forward. "Here's the good news, Claire. I believe in second chances." Her eyes lifted, cautiously hopeful. "The contract's yours," I said. Her eyes widened. "Wait, really?" I smiled. Really? Let's rebuild together. When she left, Jenna peeked into my office. You're giving the contract to Stonebridge. I thought their proposal was weak. It is, I said, staring out the window. But sometimes a bad choice is more useful than a good one. Jenna frowned. I don't follow. You don't have to, I said. Just make sure every dollar, every deliverable, every deadline runs directly through Claire Peterson. That night, I opened a file I'd been building quietly for years, not about her, but about him, the man she cheated with. David Lang, ex-investment banker fired for embezzlement, now living in Arizona under a new name. Betrayal had gone cold years ago, but now with Claire working under me, with her trust slowly reforming, I could use her to find him again. The man who'd taken everything from me wasn't gone. He was hiding, and Claire was my key to dragging him back into the light. As I closed my laptop, I saw her name light up my phone screen, a text. Claire, thank you for giving me another chance. I mean that. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back to me. Everyone deserves what they've earned. I didn't hit send right away. I wanted the timing to be perfect like everything else. So, when she finally read it, I wanted her to feel something deep in her gut. That familiar sense that something wasn't right. That the world she thought she controlled was already starting to slip. Asterisk. Asterisk. People think revenge is fire hot, loud, uncontrollable. But they're wrong. True revenge is ice, slow, patient, deliberate. You don't burn your enemy. You freeze them. You let them watch everything they love turn cold and lifeless until they realize they did it to themselves. That was my plan for Claire, and it was working. Over the next few weeks, we spoke almost every day. Meetings, calls, emails. Her voice slipped back into my life like a song I swore I'd never listen to again. Familiar and dangerous. At first, she kept it professional, but then came the little personal moments. How've you been all these years? You always were the ambitious type. I can't believe how successful you've become. She was fishing, testing, trying to find the man she used to know. I gave her glimpses, just enough warmth to make her believe I'd forgiven her, just enough distance to make her chase it, and every time she reached out, I tightened the strings a little more. By the third week, her company was struggling with the contract I'd given them. Missed deadlines, internal miscommunication, all things I'd quietly engineered. Emails delayed, invoices lost, instructions accidentally changed at the last minute. She stayed late at the office, sending frantic messages past midnight. Marcus, I promise we'll fix this. I'm doing everything I can. I can't afford another failure. That last message stuck with me, because beneath her corporate charm, I could hear the same panic I'd once felt when she left me. The difference. This time, I was the one holding the matches. One night, after another long meeting, she stopped by my office door. You look tired, she said softly. So do you, I replied without looking up. She hesitated. Can we talk? Not about work. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. What about? Her eyes were glassy, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since before she betrayed me. You, me, everything. I know I can't change the past, but I'm not that person anymore. You're right, I said. You're not. You're weaker. Her face faltered. I didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't care at the time. Her breath hitched, her eyes filling. Is that why you gave me this contract? To humiliate me? I smiled faintly. If that were true, Claire, I wouldn't be here talking to you. It was a lie, of course. The entire setup was a stage and she was performing beautifully. The next morning, I called my private investigator. Find David Lang, I said. I don't care what it costs. The pie chuckled. You still chasing ghosts, Mark? Not chasing, I said. Closing. Within a week, I had what I needed, photos, addresses, a new name. David Lang had become Daniel Morris, real estate broker in Phoenix, married, 2 kids, living the same clean, quiet life he stole from me. I stared at the photos for a long time. He'd aged softer, grayer, almost harmless looking. But I remembered the smirk on his face, when he answered my call 10 years ago. Sorry, buddy. She chose me. Double quotes now. I was going to make sure he regretted those words every single day of his life. But first, I had to finish breaking Claire. I started feeding her information. Small, precise lies designed to corrode her confidence. The investors are nervous. Stonebridge is questioning your leadership. Mason from finance said you've been missing deadlines again. None of it was true. But the human mind doesn't need truth. It needs doubt. And doubt spreads faster than any rumor. Within 2 weeks, Claire's boss called me to complain about her performance. Marcus, I don't know what's going on with her, he said. She's losing focus. Maybe we should assign someone else. I pretended to think about it. No, keep her on. I want to see if she can handle pressure. Translation. I want to see how far she can fall before she breaks. That Friday, I invited her to dinner. She hesitated, then agreed. We met at a quiet rooftop restaurant, the kind of place we used to dream about when we were young and broke. She wore black, elegant, restrained. Her eyes, though, betrayed exhaustion, sleepless nights, guilt, confusion. Why are you doing this? She finally asked. Working with me. Being kind, because I can, I said. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't kindness, is it? No, I said. It's closure. She blinked, her voice breaking. You're still angry. I leaned in closer, my voice calm, almost gentle. You don't understand, Claire. Anger fades. What I feel for you now. That's colder, cleaner. She swallowed hard. You're scaring me. Good, I said. You should be. After that night, she stopped trying to charm me. She kept her distance, kept her head down. But it didn't matter. I'd already set everything in motion. Her company's contract began to crumble, deals canceled, clients withdrawn, reputations questioned. And every time she tried to fix it, she only made it worse. It was like watching a spider caught in its own web of thrashing. Desperate and able to see that the more she struggled, the tighter it became. Then came the final piece, a mail. An anonymous tip sent to Stonebridge's board, exposing financial inconsistencies in their accounts. Every document, every number traced back to Claire's login credentials. Of course, I'd planted them. But to the world, it looked like she had betrayed her own company. The next morning, she was escorted out by security. Her eyes were red, her hair disheveled, but her face, that proud, defiant face, was finally broken. She caught sight of me in the lobby as she was being led out. Our eyes met. And for the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. That night, I poured myself a drink and looked at the photo of David Lang, the man who thought he'd gotten away. Your turn, I whispered. Because revenge wasn't finished. Not until both of them felt what I had felt. Not until every lie, every betrayal, every night of silence was paid for. I hadn't been back to Arizona since the divorce. Something about the dry heat, the endless highways, and the sound of cicadas always reminded me of that time in my life when everything fell apart. But this time, I wasn't there to mourn. I was there to finish what had started 10 years ago. Phoenix looked different now, shinier, busier, but beneath the new towers and the desert sprawl, it still had that same hollow heart. It was late afternoon when I parked across the street from a small real estate office with a shiny blue sign, Daniel Mars Properties. There he was, the man who ruined my life, David Lang, new name, same smug face. He was standing in front of the office, talking to a couple, his clients, I assumed, flashing that fake, easy smile that once fooled my wife. Except now, I wasn't the broken man he'd left behind. No. I was the shadow standing across the street, waiting for the right moment to strike. For 2 days, I watched him, followed his routine. He lived in a beautiful suburban home, had 2 kids, and a wife who looked like she still believed in him. He kissed her every morning before work. He mowed the lawn on Sundays. He was the perfect man on the outside, but I knew better. Men like him don't change, they just hide better. On the 3rd night, I made my move. He left his office just after sunset. I followed him down a quiet side road that curved toward the hills. When his car stopped at a red light, I pulled up beside him. He glanced over, then froze. Recognition is a strange thing. It takes a second for the brain to connect the face in front of you with the one buried deep in your past. His mouth opened slightly. I saw his lips form my old name. Mark? I smiled and rolled down my window. Evening, David. He swallowed hard. What the hell are you doing here? Just visiting old friends. The light turned green. He drove off fast, but I was faster. I cornered him at an old service station on the edge of town. He jumped out of the car, his face pale and sweating. Look, he said, hands raised. I don't know what this is about. But you know exactly what this is about, I said. Stepping closer, he glanced around. The place was deserted. Just the two of us, the desert wind, and the fading sun bleeding orange over the asphalt. I didn't mean to hurt you, man, he said, his voice shaking. It was a long time ago. I laughed softly. You think time washes away betrayal? He backed up a step. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. She said you were finished. She said you didn't love her anymore. I stopped. That word, she, don't you dare talk about her, I said coldly. You don't get to say her name. He looked terrified now, realizing the truth. You planned this, he whispered. All these years. I nodded once. Every second, he tried to run. I caught him by the collar and slammed him against his car. The years of anger, humiliation, and loss surged through me like electricity. You took everything from me, I shouted. My home, my wife, my life. His lips split as I hit him again. You think you can just walk away and start over? He was gasping now. Please, Mark, I've got kids. A family. So did I said quietly. Then I dropped him to the ground and stepped back. The gun felt heavy in my pocket, not because of the weight, but because of what it meant. 10 years of pain could end right here, with one pull of a trigger. He saw it in my eyes. Don't do this, he begged. You're better than me. I almost laughed. You don't get to decide that? For a long moment, neither of us moved. The wind howled through the desert, kicking up dust and old ghosts. Then I realized something that hit deeper than rage. He wasn't scared of dying. He was scared of exposure. He'd built a perfect little world here, with a fake name and fake smile. He wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid of losing that dot, and suddenly, I knew what to do. I dropped the gun beside him. You get to live, I said quietly, but you're going to lose everything. Just like I did. He looked up, confused. What are you talking about? I smiled. Check your email when you get home. Then I turned and walked away. By the time he reached his house that night, the damage was already done. Anonymous tips had been sent to his employers, his clients, the IRS, every lie, every old record, every hidden bank transfer, all brought to light. His wife would find out everything. His business would collapse. And he'd know it was me. But he couldn't prove it. That was the beauty of revenge that doesn't need witnesses. It just needs time. As I drove back to Seattle, the desert faded behind me, but the satisfaction didn't come. Not yet, because I wasn't finished. I had one last ghost to deal with. The woman who'd started it all. The one who'd smiled through every lie, who'd played both sides until the house burned down. Claire died, and she didn't know it yet, but I'd just lit the match. I chose the night carefully, a Friday, when the city would be looking at something else, when the social pages would be hungry for scandal, and the news desks would taste leverage. Claire was speaking at a downtown charity gala that evening, a polished public event where her smile would be televised, and her words would be quoted in glossy pieces for a week. It was perfect. She loved being seen. She lived for the light. I arrived early. The hall smelled of orchids and expensive perfume, the kind of scent that used to cling to her sweater and sting my throat. I wore a suit that fit like armor. I carried nothing but a small leather folio and the calm I'd kept for 10 years. The plan had two parts: ruin David so he lost his family and business, and then make Claire dismantle herself in public piece by deliberately exposed piece. By the time she realized what was happening, the damage would be irreversible. Nora Jensen had done what I asked, and then some. The investigative piece on David Marsh went live at noon. Accounts, IRS notices, client complaints, photographs of him signing documents under his old name. Within hours his phone lines were dead, his office empty, and someone from his PTA group had already called the reporters. He was falling apart in private. The public would finish the job. I watched the ripple like a heat haze, and it stung less than I thought it would. At 7, the gala shimmered. Claire walked in like she always did, practiced, luminous. People clamored for her attention. I watched as the room bent around her, saw the little feral satisfaction in her flirting smile. It should have made me sick, the way she claimed the room. But instead I felt only a cold, steady weight. Her speech was eloquent. Corporate responsibility, community engagement, the usual lines that get applause from trustees. When she smiled toward the audience, cameras caught the exact expression I'd memorized a decade ago, the one that had been my undoing. I kept my face blank. At the end of the night, after cocktails and charity bids, she stepped down from the dais and moved toward the balcony for interviews. I followed, staying far enough back to be invisible, close enough to be certain. The city lights rolled up behind her like a promise. That was when Nora did her part live. I'd arranged for her to email the gala's communications director with a link to the story and a press packet, everything clean and undeniable. A PR assistant, flustered, glanced at her tablet, then at Claire. The assistant's smile fell away. Someone whispered. The feed switched. There's a peculiar instrumentality to watching someone see the knife you've been holding for years. First there's confusion, a flicker of what? Then a slow, dawning horror when the pieces slide into place. Claire's eyes found the tablet. Her breath hitched. Her cheeks drained of color like paint pulled from a marble statue. Someone near her murmured, "Is that?" And in the space of a single heartbeat the room changed tone. Cameras pivoted. Conversations cut off mid-laugh. Phones went up. She was reading the headlines. She read the photos. She read his name. For a second she didn't look at me. Then she did. And it was like a hand on the small of my back, only colder, recognition. And then something else, a rapid flaring of fear and calculation. She mouthed a name I didn't recognize, a plea. Her fingers trembled. The crowd pressed in, and Nora's phone buzzed with notifications. Claire moved like someone steering a ship into an iceberg. She began to speak, automatic, rehearsed, trying to salvage a narrative. This is old. This is private. I had no idea. We're cooperating, she said. All the platitudes she'd used when we were young and when she'd broken my life. But the images on the tablet told a cleaner story. Emails, transfers, dates. The charity's board closed in. The host's smile turned brittle. Then she saw the live stream comments, messages that pointed to her name, her accounts, her presence at key meetings. I'd planted the breadcrumbs that connected the graph to her role at Stonebridge, a little paper trail here, a delayed invoice there, a copy of a contract with a slightly different signature. Her office files, quietly leaked to the right inboxes, painted her as the one who authorized the worst of the moves. The room smelled suddenly of treachery and perfume, and stale champagne. She stumbled back. People began to stare. Someone called for security. Her team clustered. A small private army of faces I remembered as friends. Claire's mouth moved. She tried to laugh. She tried to admonish the press. She tried to call for the board to suspend the coverage. None of it mattered. By midnight, the gala's headline would be a scandal. By morning, the finance blogs would have her number. By noon, her name would be a blot. I could have walked up then, called her by the name she remembered. I could have thrown the old photograph on the table and watched her face do whatever faces she made when she thought she could read people. Instead, I let the silence do the work. She was escorted outside by 2 men from her PR team, hunched to hold a tired composure. She saw me then, not a blur of memory, but a presence shaped and purposeful. Recognition broke across her like an animal's last defiance. She reached for me with her eyes, and in that fraction of the light I read everything: betrayal. Then a dawning terror that whatever had been a game for her had become a verdict. "Marcus," she said once, voice a thread, "please don't." Her plea did something to the people watching. It made them lean in. The photographers loved the deterioration of a public woman. The cameras hungrily recorded her unraveling. I stepped forward, close enough to see where mascara had tracked, close enough to smell the edge of her perfume. She flinched as if struck. Her face was a hurricane. I didn't shout accusations or make the scene. I let my presence be a sentence. "What did you think would happen?" I asked, quietly. "That you could carve men like me into artifacts and keep buying your image clean forever?" She opened her mouth, shook her head, began to insist on 1,000 versions of innocence. Her voice rose, desperate and raw. She tried to reach for the part of me that might forgive. "We can fix this. I can make amends. I'll pay back, pay back." I laughed, low and empty. "You always had a talent for pronouncements." Something in her snapped then, maybe the cameras, maybe the sound of the world moving away from her. She lunged, words tumbling into sobs and accusations, and then she struck me, a cowardly slap, more symbolic than strong. The room sucked in its breath as if waiting for the final, cinematic moment. I reacted faster than she expected. I grabbed her arm and, for a terrible, incandescent second, I struck back. God, it was not a calculated medical blow. It was the release of a decade's worth of humiliation packed into one motion. It landed with a sound that a room full of witnesses could never erase. Her cheek reddened, her lips split. People screamed. A dozen phones recorded everything. I saw horror cross her features then, not from the pain, but because she understood finally that I was no longer the boy bleeding in the doorway. She understood that this was not about newspapers or finance now. It was about reclamation, ugly and irrefutable. She tried to pull away, hands clawing for dignity, but the cameras had her image, and the board had already turned. Security separated us, hands pulling me back. I didn't resist. I watched her fall and then stand, one hand covering her face, the other clutching a ruined reputation. The aftermath was orchestral. Reporters shouted questions. Someone called the cops. The gala emptied like a beach when a storm hits. Claire's PR team sprinted to clean up what could be clean, but the footage was already everywhere. In the hours that followed, her phone filled with messages, angry partners, demanding trustees, the private school wondering about affiliations, a husband I'd never met left with questions on his voicemail. Her friends flinched in the lit corners of social media feeds. I left before the police found me, calm, collected, already a step beyond the thing I'd done. I walked out into the night with my coat collar up and the city's neon humming around me. The rush I'd imagined before was different from the hollow I found. It wasn't triumph. It was a bitter, precise thing, proof that I could make a life dismantle on purpose, that I could orchestrate ruin with the same careful hand I'd used to build a company. Days later, the consequences stacked like dominoes. Stonebridge suspended Claire pending an internal review. The board cited a breach of fiduciary responsibility. David's divorce papers hit the court file. Clients who'd once courted Claire now distanced themselves with the polite cruelty of corporate strategy. Her friends posted curated statements of concern. The city's gossip mills burred like machines. And Claire, the woman who had once controlled rooms with a smile, had become the woman other people watched burn. I had what I wanted. Her life, stripped of polish and pretense, lay in shards at my feet. She called me again and again, her voice raw, bargaining, threatening, pleading. Once, she begged me in a voicemail, "Marcus, please, we can talk. I'll do anything to fix this. Please." I listened to one full message and then deleted it. There's a moment after revenge when people expect light closure, calm, a clean finish. For me there was only an even, hard quiet. The thing I'd waited for didn't heal me. It confirmed me. It made me into someone who could break a life and then walk away. Weeks later, a line from an old note of hers floated into my head. You'll never understand why I had to do this. I understood now too well. She'd done what she had to survive, and I had done what I had to survive after she had taken me down. But one survival doesn't excuse the other. I watched her on the news once, an interview from her car as she drove away from the city, mascara messy, her voice thin with fatigue. She said she'd made errors in judgment, and that she regretted the hurt caused. The governor's office released a statement. Allegations are serious. Investigations will continue. Her friends issued their statements. Her husband filed for separation. Her children's school quietly reassigned their profiles. She'd been sentenced by the court of public opinion long before any legal proceeding. She'd be paid for her mistakes with everything she cherished most: status, security, the quiet glow of being untouchable. And she knew, with a clarity that would wake her at night, that I had not only paid her back but had done so in a way that let the world watch her disintegrate slowly, like a portrait left in the sun. Months passed. I moved apartments, changed routines, kept living under the clean architecture of my company. I received a call once from Nora telling me a feature piece on the whole affair was in the works. She asked if I wanted to speak. I said no. Sometimes, when the office quieted and the city hummed below, I saw her face in the reflection of the glass holder, stripped of its easy ornaments. I remembered the girl who'd once kissed me in a cramped apartment and promised forever with a reckless muff. I remembered the woman who had walked away and left me raw. And I remembered one last thing. Revenge fills a space, but it does not warm it. The heat it produces is corrosive. It burns you as it burns them. The last time I saw Claire was when she stood across from a courthouse window, watching herself on a looping news feed of the gala. Her hands were clenched at her sides, and when our eyes met briefly through the glass, she nodded, not in apology, but in the small, private acknowledgement of two people who had owned each other's worst acts. She understood, and she could do nothing but watch. I had taken everything from her. She had known for years that it might come. She'd believed the right people would shield her, that the city's light would be warm enough to dry anything. But the light turned, and the warmth left. She watched the house she'd built on other people's pain collapse, and there was nothing she could do but close her fingers on air. That's the final cruelty of revenge. It obliges the other person to watch you do to them what they did to you. The knowledge is its own punishment. I lit a cigarette that night and watched the ember die. The smoke curled up and was gone. Outside, the city pulsed oblivious. Inside, everything that could be broken had been. Inside, nothing had been mended.